Hey, what's up guys, it's James Goodchild. Maybe slightly different to what you may have been expecting. This is actually a Sony Vegas tutorial, which is something that I don't think I've done yet. I'm thinking of starting a series of doing this. Just tell me what you think in the description, whether you like this or not. This is going to be the first episode, and I'm just going to go through some common things that people tend to look for, which is project settings and render settings. I'm using Sony Vegas 11. You can do this all in the previous versions. As far as I know, you can do it from 9 onwards. I'm not sure about 8. I've never really used that too much. 11 has some different ways of doing things, so I'm just going to run through it. So if you go to this little icon here, or press Alt Enter, it will show up your project properties. Now, I have these slightly different depending on what I'm doing. Now, the presets for this are normally fine, but I tend to make my own ones. Now, if you're recording with a camera which is interlaced, then you'll have to change its field order, but I normally leave it on progressive because my camera records progressive, and if I'm doing gameplay footage, that's also progressive. I've got the size here at 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080 if you didn't know, and for 720p is 1280 by 720. Your frame rate is actually quite important. Now, if you live in Europe, you'll probably be using PAL, which basically means it's filming at 25 frames a second. This is normally only for cameras. Gameplay footage is normally recorded at 30 frames per second, no matter what. And now NTSC is roughly 30, it's actually 29.97, but this is if you're in Northern America. You will have this type of format. Now that just means that the frame rate is slightly different, it doesn't matter. So for me, I always have it on PAL because I'm in Europe. Now you can just leave it like this, but there's something down here which is this. Now often when you see films, you can kind of tell that there's this sort of grating image, and it looks quite weird when there's a lot of movement, and you can get a ghosting effect. But if you click on Interpolate Fields, you will completely get rid of that. If you go to Audio tab, everything there should be absolutely fine. You can put it up to best if you want, but it doesn't make too much difference. You can go Start New Projects with this setting, hit Apply, and then OK. Now if you go and drag some footage into there, we'll be ready to render something out. Now I've got a clip of a kitten playing with a ping pong ball. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the clip, and that will scrub through, and you can see it in this little preview window. And I'm going to go to where I want to cut it. Now you can either drag this end in when your cursor turns like this, or you can just hit S, and that will split the clip right there. I'm just going to delete this bit, drag this back, and we've got a little clip of kitten playing with a ping pong ball. I'm going to split it again, delete this end. If you press I and O, it sets in and out points. You can see that little thing just jumped. In and out point is a render area. It's an area that when you render it, that is the area it will render. So even though I've got all this footage, if I set an in point here, an out point here, it will only render this gap. However, I'm going to, for the sake of this, just render the whole thing like this. To render a project, you don't go to save, as many people often think. You go File, Render. You can't just save a video, it will save the project. You actually render it out, which can take some time. Your render as window will now open up, and there's tons of different formats that you can go for here, and I think by default it normally opens on Windows Media Video, which is fine, but we're not going to be using that. You're going to go click on Sony AVC/MVC, click on the drop down menu, and there's tons of different ones here. I've actually got a few custom ones down the bottom, but we're going to go make our own one. Now for this, you want to click on any one of these memory stick ones because we're going to be customizing it. So just click on one and then go down to Customize Template. There's a few options we're going to change through here, and I'm just going to quickly run through it. We're going to change the video format from memory stick to AVC, the frame size to whatever you have it set as in the project, but I'm going to set it as 720p. Even if you have it set as 1080p, you can still render the project in a smaller size. We're going to leave the profile on main and the entropy coding on what is left on. The frame rate we're going to match to what we've got in the project. Now you can either try and remember that, or you can look over here or it's just behind here, but it's best to remember. I know that mine is on 25 PAL because I'm in Europe. Leave the field order on progressive because that's what I have it set up as. Pixel aspect ratio we're going to leave on 1, otherwise some weird stuff starts to happen. And the bitrate we're going to put up to 10 million. This will make sure that it's got really good quality. The bitrate is bits per second, that's what the BPS means. The higher the number, the more bits per second, which is the more information per second and therefore higher quality. In code mode we'll leave it on automatic. Audio you can leave as AAC 48,000 and the bit rate as 128,000. And you can just leave all of that like that, it's completely fine. System, make sure this is select on MP4, not MPEG-2 or AVC. And project settings, you can either use project settings or put everything to best. You don't want stereoscopic 3D, so you can just leave that. The use project settings won't change anything. Your project settings for 3D at the moment are non-existent, so there won't be any. You can go ahead and you can change this template now to something like HD template. Just go ahead and save. Press OK. Select where you want to call this file, so we can just call this test. And it's going to save it in my documents. Here is the loop region what I was talking about earlier. So this means it will only render what is in between the in and out points. If you don't have this selected, it will render your whole project. So now I'm just going to go ahead and click on render. Just let this do its thing and then click on open when it's done. Fortunately this is just a short clip, so it won't take too long. Obviously for longer projects it will take longer. So I'm going to go ahead and click on open, and here you go. Really good quality clip. And you can load that straight onto YouTube, no problems. The file itself is actually only 11 megabytes, nearly 12, which is pretty small. Okay then guys, that will about wrap it up for this tutorial. If you want to see anything else and further ones, just comment below or email me, and I'll see you around soon.